So today we have Dave Scott and Luke Kavanagh from Suretek talking about the 1345 business and rebates. So how do you guys see the 13 business in Australia over the next few years? Are we going to see any changes? And if so, how will this impact the bureaus and monitoring stations?
13s are going to be around. It's not necessarily that 13s just come to a grinding halt. I think it's more the fact that technology is changing. So it's more about them with their client. I mean, commercial, it's always going to be around because they're always going to have some form of PSTN or some hardwire back to base monitored rather than just relying on a GPRS or an IP solution. I think it's more when you're looking at residential, they're the ones that are switching the PSTNs off. And so then it's up to the bureau, I suppose, to look at other technologies as such to try and regain that bit of revenue they used to get through the 13s. So talking about the 13s and where I see it, I don't think they're just going to die. They're definitely not. But technology's changing more than anything. So that's where...
Yeah, like the service will never go.
Yeah, the service will never go. Yeah.
The 1345 service will be around, the inbound network will be around, and rebates will be around.
Yeah.
Services will naturally go more towards IP rather than digital dialers.
Is it correct in saying that the 1345 business is the mainstay at the moment for alarm delivery?
Point for point, there would be more alarm dialers active than IP devices for sure. It's still hugely popular. Although some of our 1345 clients are migrating away from traditional PSTN alarm dialers, others are still using them. It's definitely not going away. It's been more so the fear about rebates going. That's sort of been the dark cloud over the 1345 services for all these years.
What's fueling that fear? Because I've been hearing that as well, that there's this like mad scramble to get whatever rebates they can.
I don't know where it's come from, and I don't know whether it's something that telcos leak out every now and then to put that fear into people, but the rumor has always, it's come in waves that, rebates are going to go. And like what you said, it sort of fuels that mentality that people need to get the highest rebate they can today because it's going to go tomorrow.
Well, I guess it is a myth because you guys have just signed a contract with Optus
in
regard to...
a lot of it is around giving that guarantee to our clients that rebates will be here to stay. We still had another 12 to 18 months left on our current agreement, but we wanted to basically give our clients the guarantee that rebates are here to stay and that Optus and Suretek want to support that service to the industry.
So how long's the contract for? What sort of...
Well, for a minimum of 5 years.
So the rebates on the 1345s through Suretek, through your network, is guaranteed for 5 years.
Yeah. So any company that has their 1345 services through Suretek are guaranteed to receive their rebates for the next 5 years.
Right.
Which is huge because the perception going back is that the fear factor is it's just going to come to a grinding halt. Like the 13s, next week it's just going to stop, and that's not the case at all.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good news for the bureaus and the control centres. I'd like to talk a little bit about the SLAs on the network because we've had a few disasters recently where we had one in South Australia and we've had a few other reports of where PSTN lines have been, dug up from under a road. People have lost their network connection and alarms aren't being delivered. And this is a problem with the redundancy on the network. Is price an indicator of the quality of the service?
Yeah, I think the providers who are willing to give away the highest rebate are reinvesting the least back into the service. It's always been something that as a service provider, Suretek have battled because we've invested so much back into the service. So we can't necessarily give away the highest rebate because we've got so much invested back into the service.
Someone listening to this would say, okay, well, probably everyone's saying that they're investing in their service. What specifically is Suretek doing that's different than the other providers?
We invented a redundancy service for 1345 services called IntelliPath, whereby if the alarm event can't get through its primary path, it will redivert and be delivered via IP over multiple fixed and wireless paths into a monitoring center. We've had control rooms like lose alarm receivers and not know because all the events are still coming to screen via IntelliPath. And that's something that we've patented and that we've had in the market for 10 years, basically.
Right. And what sort of guarantee on the alarm delivery? Do you have some sort of a guarantee with that?
We do a guarantee to our clients that every alarm event will reach the destination of the monitoring center. And if the alarm event doesn't reach the monitoring center and there is an actual break-in due to that, we provide $1,000 to that security company as a guarantee for our service. So we're not just here sort of saying our service does this and our service does that. We're actually putting a guarantee that we deliver on what we say.
You mentioned something else you guys had mentioned was the fact that bureaus will make a decision to go with a service provider on a tiny percentage difference. So they might save themselves $400 or $500 a month, and then they find themselves with, outage. Because it seems to me like the bureaus, they seem to put all the control rooms, all the monitoring centers into the same bag.
Yeah, well, it's like what Dave said before in that, there's that fear in the industry that rebates are going to go. So you can't really blame the bureau for going, okay, well, if it's going to go next year, I'm going to get as much as I can for that period of time.
Yeah, they don't really understand what type of service they're actually getting. At the end of the day, it's just a 1345 number that's just reporting. They ring up their control room that they're bureauing through. The control room tells you, yes, we've got a redundancy solution, and that's all they really want to hear, and it's fine. But they never ask the question, what type of redundancy solution have you got?
Right.
Yeah.
And the truth is, most of them don't know what to ask.
And that's a very interesting point, because how do the bureaus qualify what sorts of services
the bureaus don't really take that responsibility on board, right? They choose a monitoring center and they sort of have that expectation.
That's true, but they still wear, like, for example, if a bureau has, let's say they've got 1,000 clients and there's an outage, the redundancy just doesn't deliver as the control room has said it will.
Ultimately, it's their service, it's their client, and they need to do the best they can to ensure that they're delivering the best overall service to their client.
But that still doesn't, like, I agree with what you're saying, but if it means that the bureau loses clients because of poor redundancy.
That's kind of what I'm saying, is that I think there is the potential for that mentality where people just go, that's something that the control room must supply me, so I'm not going to stress about it. But they really do need to take responsibility for it, and they need to research and make sure that they're getting the best service that they possibly can, because if they have an outage, there's the potential that they could start to lose clients, right? And if they chase an extra half a cent here or an extra cent there for a period of time, but risk losing clients, there's no amount of rebate that's going to replace the potential loss of actually losing clients or damaging your own company brand that you've spent all those years building.
100%. It's being able to ask the right questions, but looking at the service providers' diagrams in terms of redundancy, they all seem to offer some sort of GSM backup. And so if you were to compare the services on the surface, they all look the same. They all look identical.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right, because they say we provide redundancy, right? And they think, okay, well, that's good enough for me. I've got redundancy. But the tricky thing is with GSM, it just doesn't – it's not designed to handle alarm dialers as a primary delivery path. We used to provide GSM redundancy in the early 2000s. It was great technology for the time. We also found that it only handled about 80% of call traffic when it was being used as the primary delivery path during outages. And we just found GSM no longer acceptable. When we invented IntelliPath, we've been able to deliver guaranteed communications. So I think when that sort of technology is available, I don't know why you would choose GSM over IntelliPath.
So you're saying then if bureaus were to ask the control room or the monitoring centres, do you offer IntelliPath? Are you saying that would be an accurate qualifier in terms of the service level agreement?
Yeah, if they're looking for guaranteed alarm delivery in the good times and the bad times, then they need to find a control room with IntelliPath. Every service works when everything is fine. Suretek prepare for those times when everything's not fine. And that's why we have people here 24/7 manning a help desk that are ready to support our clients in their time of need. If anything should go wrong, we're here. We have people here with the ability to escalate to the right people, whether it's internally with Suretek or at the telco itself. So when it just needs to go to A to B, from A to B, everyone's similar. Everyone's on the same level. But when it needs to go to C or go to Z, that's where I think Suretek differentiates itself, because that's what we develop our services and solutions around.
Would I be right in saying that the qualifying questions that bureaus are asking predominantly have been around rebates and nothing else?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them will say to you, no, mate, I don't do it. But the reality is they get a little bit of a clip at the end of each month that kind of helps them to do a lot of other stuff with their monitoring. They might be able to do a cheap installation as such, because the fact that they know they're going to get X, Y. So everything that they do is based around the 1.3s. And the bigger that they get, the more that comes even more important.
And it's like car insurance. It's not until something happens that you realize the importance of having redundancy.
Yeah.
So security companies themselves haven't had an issue directly. What's their concern? They don't have an immediate concern. It's that whole, she'll be right. My control room's got redundancy. There's all those things that are being said. And we see people experience the problems directly, that their attitude changes pretty quickly because they see how bad the situation can get so fast when their 1345 service isn't reporting.
Look, there's so many different ways that a 1345 can fail into a control room. And when we're looking at IntelliPath, I mean, most people, they just see the redundancy, the 1345 not coming on, they think a GSM backup is sufficient because it's just going to get through. But there's so many other different things that can happen in a control room that can prevent your 1345 number coming through. And another big issue is receiver failure, line cards failure, as Luke was saying as well. And it's not necessarily managing
This is in the control
room. And so as a bureau, when someone says, yeah, mate, we've got GSM backup, and that's fine, they accept the fact that that's it because it's a redundant solution. So, mate, if it breaks, they've got everything covered. But there's so many other things outside of just your phone line getting cut.
Wow. So legally, who's responsible when that happens? When that happens in the control, it's a failure from the control room side. Who is legally responsible?
Everybody pushes the buck down the trail. A bureau might say, well, my control room told me I have redundancy. So they say, well, I'll just blame the control room. The control room says, well, my service provider said I have redundancy, so I'll just blame them. And then they say, well, the telco said that I have redundancy, and it just keeps going and going, and nothing gets resolved. Like, I don't think that's the right mentality to say, they said I have redundancy, so if they don't supply redundancy, then I'm just going to sue them. It's not the right way to go about it, because by the time it gets to that, you've lost your client. But
it does happen.
You've had your losses.
It does happen in the industry, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is not the right mentality to have, to say my control room's told me I have redundancy, so I'm just going to rely on that. They need to look into that themselves. If they know their control room is using GSM as redundancy, they've got to understand it's not going to be able to handle 100% of the alarm events when it's in use.
So what you're saying is the bureaus need to take responsibility for educating themselves on what services they're reselling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, we had an incident recently where some Telstra work was happening down the road, and it cut the primary lines to a particular control room, and the GSM redundancy just did not work. It couldn't handle the traffic. They then phoned us, and we basically sent a short pole gateway down to them, and we had them up and running inside 24 hours without any PSTN lines going into the building at all.
I saw an interesting statement that was being issued by one of the control rooms, in that they're saying to the bureaus they cannot guarantee alarm delivery unless the bureau is using the IntelliPath network.
Yeah.
Yep. The control room itself has done the research on both solutions. And the thing that, like, it's the bureaus have got to understand too, when they're bureauing to a control room, is that there's 1,000 other security companies bureauing through this control room. So if there is to be an issue, that the biggest guarantee, if they do go down for whatever reason, it could be an external problem, something happens, and now all of a sudden you've got all these thousands of different bureaus that go to this one control room are trying to get their lines through, to get their alarm traffic through. And unfortunately, as we all know with GSM, is that as soon as you get those big lumps that want to come through at once, it's just not going to happen. And so hence the reason that this control room has made the call and said, look, and they've experienced faults as well, is that said, well, I can't guarantee because you're not on a solution that gives me a guarantee, I suppose, as such. No one that's offering GSM is going to go to a control room and guarantee the alarm traffic coming through like we will with IntelliPath. They just won't do it because they know that as soon as that congestion comes in, that, yeah, some of them are going to get through, but not all of them are going to get through.
Yeah, and we find like the control rooms that have actually been through this become our biggest salespeople.
Absolutely.
Because they quite often will support our IntelliPath and GSM redundancy, and they get that like-for-like comparison of what works during their hour of need, right? So they're not willing to put their own business at risk anymore, and that's why they're out there recommending IntelliPath.
That was Dave Scott and Luke Kavanagh from Suretek, giving us some interesting insights into the choices presented to installers and bureaus and what they should consider before choosing a monitoring centre. As discussed, Suretek has signed a 5-year renewal contract with Optus, which solidifies rebates for their partners into the year 2020. If you would like more information about any of the topics discussed in this podcast, you can contact Dave directly via email at david.scott@suretek.com.au or call him directly on 1300 65 4433, or you can reach out to Suretek online at suretek.com.au.